What you're about to hear might change everything you thought you knew about the biggest mystery in hip-hop history. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, the man who stood inches away from one of the most powerful figures in music for years, has finally broken his silence. And what he's saying is absolutely explosive. We're talking about revelations so shocking that Gene himself realizes he may have just put his life in serious danger. We're talking about Tupac, we're talking about Biggie, and we're talking about a conspiracy that goes so deep it involves not just murder, but betrayal at levels you cannot imagine. But here's what makes this different from every other Tupac and Biggie theory you've ever heard. Gene Deal wasn't watching from the sidelines. He wasn't a conspiracy theorist on the internet. He was there. He was in the room. He was in the car. He saw things that night that he's kept quiet about for nearly 3 decades. And now he's talking. But there's a twist to this story that nobody saw coming. When 50 Cent and Netflix announced their bombshell documentary about Diddy, Gene Deal was supposed to be the star witness, the smoking gun that would bring everything crashing down. He had the evidence, he had the footage, he had the credibility. So why did he walk away? In this video, we're going to connect every single dot. We're going to show you the exact moment Gene Deal reveals information that could destroy Diddy forever. We're going to explain why both Gene and Jaguar Wright refused to be part of Netflix's documentary. And we're going to reveal what Gene discovered that made him call the entire project a trap. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly who destroyed Diddy, and the answer might surprise you. Before we dive into the bombshell allegations, we need to understand exactly who Gene Deal is and why his testimony carries so much weight. Gene Deal wasn't just any bodyguard. He was Diddy's personal bodyguard during the most critical years of Bad Boy Records. We're talking mid to late 90s, the absolute peak of the East Coast-West Coast war. Gene was there for everything: the studio sessions, the private conversations, the parties, the business deals. But most importantly, Gene Deal was physically present on the night of March 9th, 1997, the night the notorious B.I.G. was murdered in Los Angeles. Think about that for a second. Gene wasn't hearing about this secondhand. He wasn't reading about it in the news. He was in the car. He saw Diddy's behavior leading up to that night. He witnessed things that investigators either missed or deliberately ignored. And for almost 30 years, Gene kept his mouth shut. He remained loyal. He protected Diddy's secrets. But something changed. In 2024, when Homeland Security raided Diddy's homes and federal charges started piling up, Gene Deal started talking. And once he started, he couldn't stop. On podcasts like The Art of Dialogue, Gene began dropping revelation after revelation. He talked about Diddy's jealousy of Tupac. He talked about suspicious behavior on the night Biggie died. He talked about seeing $1 million check connected to a hit on Tupac. He talked about Diddy wanting him dead despite years of loyalty. According to Gene, Diddy recorded everything. Everywhere Diddy went, his cameras and tape recorders went with him. He was allegedly videotaping everyone: celebrities, politicians, even preachers at his infamous parties. Gene claims that Diddy has footage that could implicate some of the most powerful people in the world. And Gene, he knows where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. So when 50 Cent announced he was making a documentary to expose Diddy, Gene Deal was the obvious choice for the star witness. The question is, why didn't it happen? To understand Gene's allegations, we need to go back to the mid-1990s, because without context, none of this makes sense. Hip-hop in the 90s wasn't just music. It was a culture war. It was territorial. It was personal. And by 1996, it had become deadly. At the center of it all were 2 men, Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls. These weren't just rivals. They were once close friends, brothers even. Tupac had genuine love for Biggie in the early days. They respected each other's art. They hung out. They talked about taking over the world together. But then came November 30th, 1994, the night everything changed. Tupac was attacked at Quad Studios in New York City. He was shot 5 times by 3 masked men. They robbed him. They left him for dead. But Tupac survived. And when he woke up in that hospital bed, everything was different. Because Tupac believed, rightly or wrongly, that Biggie and Diddy knew the attack was coming. He believed they set him up. Now, here's where Gene Deal's testimony gets interesting, because Gene claims that Diddy was at Quad Studios that night. And according to Gene, Diddy knew exactly what was about to happen to Tupac. But Diddy said nothing. He did nothing. He let it happen. Years later, one of the shooters, Isaac Dexter, confessed. He said they were paid $2,500 by Jimmy Henchman, a powerful industry figure with serious street connections. But Gene asks the question nobody else is asking. Where did Jimmy Henchman get his orders? Where did the money really come from? Gene's answer: follow the money, and it leads straight back to Diddy. But why? Why would Diddy want to hurt Tupac? According to Gene, it all comes down to one thing: jealousy. Diddy had money. Diddy had power. Diddy had Bad Boy Records. But there was one thing Diddy could never have: Tupac's natural charisma. Tupac had a magnetism that you couldn't buy. Women loved him. Men respected him. He had a presence that filled every room he Diddy entered, and Gene claims that Diddy hated that. It wasn't professional rivalry, it was personal, it was deep, it was the kind of jealousy that can turn deadly. After the Quad Studios shooting, the East Coast versus West Coast war exploded. Tupac signed with Death Row Records. Suge Knight became his protector. The rivalry became public. Diss tracks dropped. Threats were made. Violence loomed over the entire culture. And then came September 7th, 1996. September 7th, 1996. Las Vegas. Mike Tyson fight. Tupac Shakur is riding in a car with Suge Knight when a white Cadillac pulls up beside them at a red light. Gunshots. Tupac is hit 4 times. He survives for 6 days before dying on September 13th. He was only 25 years old. The case went cold. No arrests, no charges, just theories and speculation for decades. But then, years later, a man named Dwayne Keefe D. Davis started talking. In interviews, he claimed that he was offered $1 million to kill both Tupac and Suge Knight. He said the hit came from the East Coast. He said the money came from someone with serious industry power. Only Tupac was killed. According to Keefe D., half the money was supposedly paid. But here's the problem. The shooters never got their share. A man named Eric Zip Martin allegedly kept the money for himself. Now this is where Gene Deal's testimony becomes absolutely crucial, because Gene claims he personally saw a check, a $1 million check. And according to Gene, Zip said the money came from Jimmy Henchman. But Gene doesn't stop there. He asks the obvious question: where did Jimmy Henchman get $1 million? Who was he working for? Gene's answer: Diddy. Think about the timeline. Diddy and Tupac had serious beef after Quad Studios. Diddy was tied to Bad Boy, the East Coast empire. Tupac was with Death Row, the West Coast powerhouse. The rivalry was at its peak. Both sides wanted blood. And according to Gene, Diddy's jealousy had turned into something far more dangerous. It wasn't just about protecting his empire. It was about eliminating a threat. It was about making sure that Tupac's star power didn't overshadow everything Diddy was trying to build. Then, in 2024, Kirk Burroughs, co-founder of Bad Boy Entertainment, came forward in Netflix's documentary, The Reckoning, and he backed up Gene's claims. Burroughs said that Diddy was involved in Tupac's death. He cited the same motive, jealousy. But Burroughs added another piece to the puzzle. He talked about suspicious rental cars. According to Burroughs, Diddy allegedly rented cars to drive from New York to Las Vegas the same weekend Tupac was killed. Think about that. Why would you drive from New York to Vegas when you could fly? What would you need to transport that you couldn't take on a plane? Was it money? Was it weapons? Was it people? Gene Deal believes the answer is simple. Diddy was coordinating. He was pulling strings. He was making sure everything was in place. And when law enforcement investigated, they missed the crucial connection. They never followed the money. They never traced it back to its source. Gene is calling on authorities to do exactly that. Follow the money trail. Trace it from Zip back to Jimmy Henchman, and from Jimmy Henchman back to Diddy. But here's the most disturbing part of Gene's claims. Tupac's murder was just the beginning. March 9th, 1997. 6 months after Tupac's death, Los Angeles, the Soul Train Music Awards after party. Biggie Smalls, the notorious B.I.G., was uncomfortable. He didn't want to be in L.A. The West Coast tensions were still sky high after Tupac's murder. Biggie felt like a target. According to Kirk Burroughs, Biggie was supposed to fly to Europe that day, but Diddy forced him to stay. Diddy wanted to party. Diddy wanted to flaunt. Diddy wanted to show the West Coast that Bad Boy wasn't afraid. But Gene Deal noticed something strange in the days leading up to that night. Diddy was acting paranoid, nervous, jumpy. He was behaving in ways that felt completely out of character. And then came the night of the party. Gene wanted to ride with Biggie. As Biggie's bodyguard, Gene's job was to protect him. But Diddy threatened to fire Gene if he didn't ride in Diddy's car instead. Diddy forced Gene away from Biggie. He made sure that Biggie's car had no armed protection. Why would Diddy do that? Then came the stalling. According to Gene, Diddy delayed leaving the party over and over again. He talked to random people. He lingered. He killed time. It was like he was waiting for something or someone. Gene believes Diddy was buying time for the shooter to get into position. He was making sure Biggie's car was in the right place at the right time. He was ensuring that Gene, the one person who could have stopped it, wasn't there. And then it happened. As Biggie's car pulled up to a red light, another car was already waiting, parked, positioned. The timing was too perfect. The placement was too precise. 4 shots. Biggie was hit. He died instantly. Gene chased the shooter's car, but something strange happened. Gene's car had a speed limiter. It wouldn't go faster than 100 miles per hour. Every time Gene tried to accelerate, the car slowed down. The shooter got away. Gene asks a critical question. Why would a bodyguard's car have a speed limiter? These are vehicles designed for protection and pursuit. Speed limiters make no sense unless someone wanted to make sure the shooter could escape. Gene believes it was sabotage. He believes the car was rigged. He believes Diddy planned every detail. But why? Why would Diddy want Biggie dead? Biggie was his biggest biggest star? Biggie was the foundation of Bad Boy Records. Gene's answer, control. Biggie was becoming independent. He was starting his own production company. He was planning to leave Bad Boy and build his own empire. Diddy couldn't control him anymore, and for Diddy, losing control was unacceptable. So according to Gene, Diddy made a calculation. Biggie was worth more to him dead than alive. Dead, Diddy owned Biggie's entire catalog. Dead, Biggie became a legend, and Diddy controlled the legend. Dead, Biggie's music would generate millions for decades, and that's exactly what happened. After Biggie's death, Diddy released I'll Be Missing You, a tribute song that became a massive hit. Diddy cried at the funeral. Diddy played the grieving friend. Diddy built his career on Biggie's legacy. But Gene saw through it. Gene believes every tear was fake. Every tribute was an act. Gene claims that Diddy didn't just kill Biggie's body. He killed Biggie's future, and then he profited from it. The man in the blue suit that Gene noticed earlier in the night, Gene wonders if that was the shooter doing reconnaissance. The suspicious stalling, the forced separation from Biggie, the speed-limited car. Gene believes it was all part of the plan, and Diddy was the mastermind. But here's where Gene's story takes its darkest turn. Gene claims that despite years of loyalty, despite protecting Diddy's life, despite keeping his secrets, despite being there through everything, Diddy wanted Gene dead. Why? Because Gene knew too much. Gene was there for Quad Studios. Gene was there for Tupac's murder. Gene was there for Biggie's murder. Gene saw the checks. Gene heard the conversations. Gene witnessed the planning. And in Diddy's world, according to Gene, anyone who knows too much becomes a liability. It doesn't matter how loyal you've been. It doesn't matter how many times you've saved his life. If you're a threat, you're eliminated. Gene calls Diddy maniacal and sociopathic. He says Diddy eliminates perceived threats without hesitation. He says even close allies aren't safe. And now, in 2025, with Diddy convicted and sentenced to 50 months in federal prison, Gene's claims are finally getting the attention they deserve. In October 2025, Diddy was sentenced after being found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. He was acquitted of the more serious charges, racketeering and sex trafficking, but the jury's verdict was clear. Diddy is guilty. Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, testified for 4 days. She described years of abuse, coercion, and trauma. She talked about freak-offs, where Diddy forced her to have sex with male escorts while under the influence of drugs. She talked about constant fear and hypervigilance. And through it all, Gene Deal's claims started to make more and more sense. But here's the question that nobody is asking. If Gene's allegations are true, if Diddy really was involved in Tupac and Biggie's murders, why hasn't he been charged? Gene believes the answer is simple. Protection. Powerful people are involved. Politicians, celebrities, industry executives, people who don't want the truth to come out. And that brings us to 50 Cent's documentary and the biggest question of all. Why did Gene walk away? 1 month after Diddy's arrest in September 2024, 50 Cent and Netflix announced a bombshell documentary series called Sean Combs' The Reckoning. The promise was explosive, never-before-seen footage, real evidence, the truth about Diddy's empire. 50 Cent positioned himself as the truth-teller, the man who would finally expose Diddy's lies. And Gene Deal was supposed to be the star witness. 50 Cent had been posting Gene's interview clips on Instagram for years. He personally contacted Gene. He was willing to pay whatever Gene required. He valued Gene's credibility above everything else. And Gene was ready. He gathered all his evidence. He contacted Kirk Burroughs and other Bad Boy executives who had been wronged by Diddy. He prepared to tell the full story. But then, Gene contacted the documentary's producer, and something felt wrong. Gene realized that Netflix was using his image for promotion, but they had no real intention of telling the full truth. According to Gene, the documentary was never about accountability. It was about money. It was about hype. It was about streaming numbers. The victims' stories were being sidelined. The real truth was being watered down. The documentary was becoming exactly what Gene feared, a sensationalized cash grab that would let the real perpetrators off the hook. So Gene walked away, and he wasn't alone. Jaguar Wright, another outspoken critic of Diddy who has made explosive allegations about the entire industry, also refused to participate. Her reason? The same as Gene's. The documentary was a trap. Both Gene and Jaguar are now in talks for Season 2 of the documentary. But this time, 50 Cent has a different plan. Season 2 will reportedly be released on YouTube, not Netflix. 50 Cent no longer trusts Netflix. He wants full control over the narrative. He wants to make sure the truth comes out without corporate interference, and Gene respects that. Gene distinguishes 50 Cent from Diddy. According to Gene, 50 doesn't lie. 50 doesn't manipulate. 50 genuinely wants the truth. The trust between Gene and 50 remains intact. But the damage to Netflix's credibility had already been done. When The Reckoning was finally released on December 2nd, 2025, It became the #1 title on Netflix, even surpassing Stranger Things Season 5 in viewership. Over 21.8 million people watched it in the first 6 days. But Diddy's legal team immediately called it a shameful hit piece. They claimed Netflix used stolen footage that Diddy had been recording since he was 19 to tell his own story in his own way. The documentary featured intimate footage shot in the 6 days leading up to Diddy's arrest. It showed Diddy on the phone with his lawyer saying, "I don't think it's working. We're losing." It showed him strategizing with his team. It showed a vulnerable, desperate man watching his empire collapse. Director Alexandria Stapleton defended the footage, saying it was legally obtained and that they moved heaven and earth to keep the filmmaker's identity confidential. But Gene's warning proved accurate. Less than a week after Netflix's documentary dropped, Diddy's children announced their own documentary in partnership with Zeus Network. The trailer showed Justin and Christian Combs on a couch with headlines about Diddy flashing across the screen. It showed Justin answering a collect call from Diddy at Fort Dix Federal Correctional Institution, where Diddy was transferred in late October 2025. Gene had predicted this. He warned 50 Cent early on that Diddy's family would release a counter-documentary focused on personal attacks. The goal? To discredit everyone speaking out, to shift the narrative, to paint Diddy as the victim. And now, it's happening exactly as Gene said it would. But here's where we need to step back and ask the big question. Was Diddy acting alone? Gene Deal doesn't think so. Jaguar Wright doesn't think so. And if you look at the evidence, it's hard to believe that one man, no matter how powerful, could orchestrate all of this without help. Let's connect the dots. Gene claims Diddy had politicians, princes, and preachers at his parties. He recorded everything. If that's true, how many powerful people are implicated in those tapes? How far up does this go? Why did it take until 2024 for authorities to act? Gene himself asks this question. Puff was doing some crazy shooty. Why didn't they stop him then? Why did they wait till 2024? The answer might be that Diddy had protection, people in high places who benefited from keeping him free. Both Tupac and Biggie's murders remain officially unsolved. No one has been convicted. Why? If Gene's claims are true, if there's a money trail, why hasn't it been followed? Some believe the investigation was deliberately sabotaged. Some believe powerful people didn't want the truth to come out because it would expose corruption at the highest levels. Why was Netflix so eager to control the narrative? Why did they allegedly sideline victim stories in favor of sensationalism? Who benefits from a watered-down version of the truth? Gene and Jaguar believe the answer is simple. The industry is protecting someone bigger than Diddy. Season 2 of the documentary, the version that 50 Cent will control, is supposed to fill in the missing pieces. It's supposed to name the names that were deliberately ignored. It's supposed to connect the connections that Netflix avoided. The question is, will we finally get the full truth? Or will the same forces that protected Diddy for decades shut it down again? So here's what we're left with. Gene Deal, a man who stood by Diddy's side for years, has made allegations so serious that they could rewrite hip-hop history. He claims Diddy was involved in both Tupac and Biggie's murders. He claims Diddy's jealousy turned deadly. He claims the investigation was deliberately sabotaged. And he claims that powerful people are still being protected. Gene walked away from Netflix's documentary because he believed it was a trap designed to control the narrative without revealing the full truth. 50 Cent is planning Season 2 to finally expose the missing pieces. Diddy is sitting in federal prison, convicted of lesser charges, but acquitted of the most serious accusations. And the families of Tupac and Biggie, they're still waiting for justice after nearly 30 years. So, the question for you is, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Gene is telling the truth? Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications,